how to set up a small project on Asana using the Kanban method. With Kanban, this is a style of project management. The idea is that everyone should be able to work independently. You assign groups of tasks, and people who need to work on those tasks should just be able to pick them out of a hat, basically, and just work on them as long as they have some kind of direction. So it's great for distributed teams like ours, and it's supposedly a really fast way to go about things. I've set up Asana not in list mode, but in board mode. And before I go any further, I'm going to explain a little bit of theory. Okay, with Kanban, there's a concept that they call epics, stories, and tasks. And the idea here is that there's a metaphor at play. So if you were to take an epic, like the Epic of Gilgamesh or the epics of Hercules, let's say, in order to fulfill the epic is composed of a series of stories. Hercules, I think he goes and he wrestles I don't even remember. He wrestles a three-headed dog, I think, to steal something from the underworld so that he can prove to Zeus that he's good enough to worthy of Zeus's praise, something like that. So there's an epic. There's one of the stories he has to accomplish in this epic, right? Yep. Another story might be that he cuts a head off of this lizard, this dragon that has several heads. He finds out that several of the heads, you cut off the head and more grow, and so he has to figure out how to outsmart the cutting off of the heads, and then he accomplishes that. He can bring the head to whoever he's supposed to bring it to show that he's done it, and then that's another story. So by accomplishing, say, 7 of these stories, you have the epic. Each of the stories involves tasks, right? So in order to, say, get past the three-headed dog, he has to, find bacon or something to, I don't remember how the story goes, but he, bribed the dog so that he could distract the dog and go past it. So he has to go on a quest to maybe find someone who has bacon and then trade something for the bacon, which means he has to go and find something to trade, blah, 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 right? If you've played an adventure game, this is kind of how the things are set up. So with this style of project management, there's the concept of tasks, which is the individual actions a person has to perform in order to complete some bigger goal. The bigger goal is called the story, and several stories make an epic. The reason this is important is that the way that we structure a project is that a milestone, let's say, or a release product might be considered to be an epic. And in order to complete the epic, you have to be able to complete several user stories. A user story might be that the user, as a user, I can register my email address. And as a user, another story might be, as a user, I can log in through Facebook. As a user, I can save my file on the system, right? This kind of thing. So those are the stories that make up the epic. There might be many of them. I can print, I can save, I can open files, and so on. Now, in order to complete those stories, I'll have to perform tasks. I have to click the icon on my screen. I have to open up the app. I have to click on the new file button or the register. Let's say we're registering. As a user, the story is I can register. So now I'm presented with a screen that has like a login field and a password, and I can click sign up. So the task is that I put in my email address and my password. I click the button as another task. And then the next task is that I open my email, and the next task is I confirm my email. So that's how this is structured. The epic is composed of these stories like I want to be able to register, I want to be able to print, and the stories are composed of tasks like fill in the form and click the button and open my email and click the registration button. So that's the concept behind the style of project management. So let's do a little example. So I've whipped together a note-taking app called Notable. And we'll say that for Epic 1 of this app, we're going to be able to, let's say Epic 1 is, first of the project is called Notable, right? Can I increase the font size here? There we go, so you guys can see it. Notable, note-taking app. Okay, so we can have more than one epic on this, epic being feature sets that we want to release to the public. But for Epic 1, we want to be able to take notes, right? Maybe Epic 2, we want to be able to share notes or organize by folders, right? Epic 3 might be sharing, right? Printing, sharing, sending through Messenger, sending through email, that kind of thing. But for now, let's worry about Epic 1. Epic 1, what are the stories? One story is as a user, I want to be able to create a new note, right? I want to be able to edit an existing note. I want to be able to save a note. I want to be able to delete a note. And I want to be able to list existing notes and open existing notes, right, to edit. View/edit. So these are the basic user stories for Epic 1, which is note-taking, or the basic functionality. Epic 2 might be, let's say, create a new folder. As a user, I want to be able to delete a folder. Move, rename folder, etc., etc. Move files from one folder to another, let's say. Oh, we should be able to name the file. So you see that this is the epics take on this role of feature sets, or user stories that are related to that broader theme. And within that, we have the tasks. To create a new note, we have to be able to say access the local file system or database, right? Create new records, create a button, a new note button, right? Open new note. So this is a user story, right? Also, and this is a task. So now we have epics, stories, and tasks, and that's the basic structure of a Kanban. So you guys are probably already familiar with this because you've done Kanbans before, a lot of you. But that's the theory behind how to do this. Now, to organize the Kanban, we want to have a backlog. Actually, we want to have a blocked first. Blocked items are things that you can't do because you're waiting on something else to happen. So for instance, I can't save a note until I can create a new note. So the save a note story is blocked by the create a new note story, is how we represent that. We have a backlog. These are items that we want to achieve, but we haven't gotten to yet. So it's sort of like it's the hat that you pick things out of the hat and you're ready to go, right? You should be able to just, as you're moving through the tasks, just pick up the next thing and run. You have an in progress, which is things that people are currently working on. Ideally, you have a testing column, which is stuff that we think are done, but actually we're testing it, making sure that it still works. And then we have the done column. This is stuff that we're pretty sure it works. Okay, so those are our boards. I'm going to zoom out here so we can see all of them all at once. And we've got the blocked, backlog, in progress, testing, done. Now, essentially what we do is we're supposed to break up these user stories into bite-sized chunks so that the tasks can be, there can be relatively few tasks to implement in order to achieve that story. So we go in here, what do we have? We're going to create a new note. Before I go any further, let me show you what we're basing this on. I whipped together a mock-up of this note-taking app, and this is the goal of what this note-taking app should look like. I think we're all visual enough that looking at this will give us an idea of what might go into making it, right? So in this case, we have the file list. As you can see, there's a new file icon, new edit, whatever. This is the name of the app, Notable. This is the title bar. This is inside of an iPhone, of course. And these are the lists of various files that we've created on the note-taking app. So they're stored locally on some kind of database. And if you swipe left, then you get a little delete icon that you can click. Okay, so that's the listing functionality. If you click on one of these notes, then you're brought to the note editor, which is just this list of this text that you've saved. And if you click on the text, it opens the keyboard. That way you can just edit the text. You can change the colors or not the colors, the font size and whether it's bold and italicized and underlined and so on. This is the note title up here that the person can click and edit. And if they choose, they can click on these three dots and delete from the file. So if they don't know what the file is before they open it, oh, that's the one I want to delete. That's, for whatever reason. So pretty basic app. You can list files, you can edit files, you can delete files. Create new files, save files. We presume that if you click the back button, it saves, or it saves as you edit, something like this. So this is what the project structure is going to be based on. Now, in the real world, maybe you don't have screenshots, you don't have mock-ups, but you'll be designing it as you go. But anyway, we come up here, and so we know that we need to have, say, we got the create new note, and we have an edit note, right? Save note. We have a delete note, delete. Actually, specifically, we're going to delete from, here, let me make these bigger so you can read it. Delete from file list, right? That's actually a different story. We have a delete from note, because actually looking at the screens here, there's two different delete paths towards deleting a file. There's the file list, and there's the menu option in the notes. So those are actually two different user stories now that I think about it. Let's see, I'm going back to my list here. 7-day list, we need to be able to list notes, list saved notes, and we need to be able to open existing note for editing or viewing, and we need to be able to rename a file, right? Rename a file, a note. So that's our backlog. And if we have a team, we can assign these to particular people. But we also may want to put tasks in here because, renaming a note, here, let's start at the beginning here. Let's say we have create a new note. This might be the first thing we work on. You can add subtasks. So one subtask, I'm looking at this because we just jotted this down. We need to be able to read and write to the database, right? We need to be able to, let's say, create a new notes record in the database. Okay. We need a new notes button. And action to open new note screen, right? These are subtasks. These are tasks in this story. This is as a user I want to be able to, right? This is how you're supposed to think about how you name these stories. So it should be always user-focused in the story. Now I'm going to shorten this. I know it's as a user I want to be able to create a new note. So in here, it might be provide a description. User, this is where you can get really detailed. You can say user should be able to click a button on the top right of the screen in the nav bar, let's say, that opens a new note. Opening a new note will automatically, once the note is opened, let's say the note will be automatically saved, I don't know, every 3 seconds or by event whenever the user types. Depending on how you want to define that requirement, whenever the user types a new word, let's say, into the local storage. If no text is written, no new file is saved. Okay, there we go. So now we have a functional requirement for this story, and we have a list of tasks. Now we can assign people to this specific task if we want. We find out like one for, maybe there's an API involved and you need to assign the API developer to that, or there's the app developer, you assign the app developer, there's the graphic designer. So there might be several tasks and you can assign assign people to specific tasks in this story. And there might be even, a story might be related entirely to the API or entirely to the app. And so you can assign this entire story to one person, a developer or whatever. So you go through and you can put in, let's say, save note is whenever the user types a word followed by a space or punctuation, or leaves the note idle for more than, I don't know, 3 seconds, the system, the app, will auto-save the text, right? Something like that. So now we have a functional requirement for the save note, and then this is going to be create an event callback on typing. Let's see. Create an idle timeout on non-typing in note view, let's call it, in note view, and then create auto save mechanism that saves text and title to the local storage. Right now we have tasks for this story. Okay, so now what happens is the people who work on this project, you know, if we're running a sprint, let's say, every week, you go and you say, okay, what are we working on this week? What are the priorities? And if creating a new note, let's say, is the first thing we have to do, because you can't save anything that's not there. So clearly creating a new note is the first thing that we can do. So you just drag this into in progress, and then you start working on it. So the person goes through and they're like, okay, I finished. I can read and write to the database, and you know, the developer later says like, okay, I can create a new note record in the database, and I've implemented the note button. And then you reach the end of the week, and this isn't done yet. So in theory, you can drag this back into the backlog, and you can reevaluate if it's still a priority. And if it's still a priority, you can drag it back into in progress. Now, if you know that it's still a priority, you can just leave it in progress. And you don't have to drag it back and forth, of course, but that's the idea. So, you know, you continue working on this. Let's say the next week, the guy implements the open new note screen, and then they put it in, you drag it into testing. Now you go into the app, you go into the app, and you basically, at this point, you have a title bar with a button, and you can essentially click this and open a new note and type in it, and it should give you some status message. And that's essentially what the app would do at this point. So you can test it and be like, okay, it works, and now it's done. You drag it into done. And that feels great because you've got this thing in your done column. Now, you might find out that, you know, let's say you can't list saved notes until you have saved notes. Well, that goes in your backlog, or you're blocked. You can't do anything. In fact, you can't delete a note until you can create notes. You can't delete a file from a list unless you already can list saved notes, right? Ideally, let's say you've got, actually, in reality, all of these are blocked until this is done. So you're working on in progress. You create a note. Now you are working on this. You move it into testing or done, and suddenly you free up the ability to say edit, delete, save notes, right? Maybe you can even rename a note. And that's another thing you can do because you want to be able to rename it from the title bar, let's say, in this example. Now, you can't say delete from the list until you can list saved notes, right? So this is the backlog, but this is blocked still. So now the next thing might be, hey, we want to be able to list saved notes. So you go and you drag this in. Let's give an example here. List saved notes. We need to be able to read notes from local storage. There's going to be a display notes in a list. If notes list is longer than, I don't know, 10, then use some kind of list item recycling to save memory. Use pagination stuff. I don't know. Something like this. So you find out that you can't show 5,000 list items, let's say, if there are more than, I don't know, 100 notes, then warn user that storage is limited, or whatever, whatever features you want. You put in your functional requirements. I want user can scroll can't type, scroll through list of saved notes. Clicking on a note opens the editor, note view editor, and swiping left reveals a delete button, which when clicked will delete that note. Right, this is the functional requirement. So now the person can do that. Also, maybe we can attach a screenshot because that's kind of useful. So let's, right, can we do that? Yeah, there we go. Now we have a little screenshot, so that's useful. Right. Now the person who's working on this now puts this into progress. They're starting to check off these tasks. We got somebody who's working on this read from local storage. Somebody displays the notes in the list and figures out how to do pagination and all that stuff. Right, it's done. And as soon as they move it into, say, testing or done, well, you can now delete from the file list because that's been unblocked by the completion of the file list. So now they can go through and, there's a swipe left to reveal delete button, deletes list item, delete button, deletes note from local storage. Right. Now when the guy who's working on this drags into progress, they can go and, fulfill all these tasks and then move it into testing, test out the app, and then move it to done. And one by one, these backlog items move into in progress and then testing, right? And out of the backlog, eventually all into testing, and then all done. And then guess what? You have an app. You don't have to assign roles to a story or to a task. So let's say you've got this edit note. And let's, for the sake of filling this in, explain what tasks are involved in the story. So the edit note is open edit note screen. There's clicking on text opens keyboard if not already open, and then typing in keyboard inserts text into text view in the place of the caret, and user can select text. User can just say select text, cut, copy, paste, apply style from style bar buttons, right? Bold, italic, and so on. Okay, so we've got this story called edit note, and edit note has several tasks involved. So as a project manager, I can choose to assign someone to work on this, but I don't need to. I can also assign on a per task level. Say like I want Tony to work on this, and I want say Dimitri to work on this, let's say. So I don't need to do that, because if I have a good team and they know what they do, then they should be able to figure that out themselves. So when this is, let's say this is in backlog, then when it's time to work on this, since someone's ready to work on this, they can just assign it to themselves. Say, oh, I'm going to work on all these tasks, and they drag it into in progress, and now you can see that someone is working on that. They can also, maybe they don't want to work on all the tasks, but they want to work on this one, then they can do that. So now this is in progress, but when you open it, you see that this person is working on this and this, let's say. So I can assign, as a project manager, I can assign tasks, but I can also, as anyone on the team, take tasks for myself. Now, let's say there's a problem, and I go, oh man, style buttons don't display on small screens. Should we have a scrolling style bar or a two-level style bar or a button extension? Right now, this comment is part of a decision-making process that goes in deciding how this feature should work. And the next person can come in and say, let's do a scrolling, scroll left to right. Right, meaning that you have this button bar here, and you can click and swipe left to right to reveal different buttons. Right, so this is a decision. This comment, then, if you're good, now here's the role of the project manager. You put this in the description when the button bar is too wide for the screen, create, reveal other buttons by scrolling left to right. Right, now I don't have to, as a developer or anyone else, read through dozens or hundreds of comments to figure out what the live decision-making process that was used to create the feature set, the design specifications is. I can just look at, here's the current state of design specification. Here's the current feature set, and I don't have to clutter my mind with, oh, did we think about this problem? What happens if blah 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 blah? No, none of that. Just it's done. Okay, so a good project manager should focus these decisions, and actually a good development team also should tell the project manager, we decided on this. Okay, because also the project manager shouldn't get confused by what this chat history is. Whoever makes the decision should tell the project manager and the design team, this is the decision. So that way, this can be there for the purpose of having the discussion, but not for the purpose of everyone catching up to date. Not everyone needs to know what the discussion was. They only need to know what the decision is so that they can enforce that decision. Now, if you want to stay up to date on this live stream of chatter about this one topic, you can add yourself as a collaborator, or you can assign someone as a collaborator. Like, hey, it's kind of like it's a little like tagging so-and-so and say, hey, let me know what you think about this, because anyone who's a collaborator is going to receive an update with every one of these comments by email. And that includes when this task is, say, moved from progress to testing. If anyone who is a collaborator is going to receive an email notification saying, oh, this task is moved, or someone has commented on this task. So that's useful to know. The last thing is deadlines. So you can assign a deadline. Let's say if you know for sure that this task has to be done by Thursday for some reason, then you can assign the deadline. And then everyone knows that it's there and it's looming. And if it's behind, then it shows up with a red text here. So that's a little visual indicator that it's behind. And if I want to filter to make my life easier, let's say I want to only see tasks that I'm working on, then I can do that. I can also see only tasks that are, say, due this week, and then these two tasks show up because I've assigned them as due this week. So there's a little bit of filtering. So if we have a big project, you can kind of cut the clutter. But that's basically, that's what you can do to manage who receives what information, who's working on which projects, how people can assign their own tasks, and so on. So that's how you organize a project with Kanban. And that's the concept behind what an epic is, what a story is, and what a task is. You see, the task is the individual actions that have to be performed in order to complete a story. A story is a process that a user wants to have access to, or a workflow, or something like this. And an epic is the combination of these workflows or features that the user should be able to have access to in order to have a feature-complete app, even if it's minimal like this. And as you can see, it's very basic, this one. And like I said, you might reevaluate and say, okay, Epic 2, we want to be able to create folder structures. And Epic 3, you want to be able to do social sharing or saving files online, or having a cloud backup or whatever. So you got your MVP in Epic 1 and so on. So that's it.